In the silence of the ancient world, the first cry was heard. Not the cry of a newborn, not the sound of joy or pain. It was a cry that split the earth in two, echoing through every war, every revolution, every fratricidal conflict of our age. Today we uncover a mystery hidden from human eyes for millennia. Imagine the moment when innocence was lost forever, when the earth first tasted human blood. That blood cried out to heaven with such force that the Creator himself heard it. But the most terrifying truth is this: the cry never stopped. It only changed its form. It all began when humanity still remembered Eden. Adam and Eve, cast out of paradise, tried to build a new world with their own hands. Their children Cain and Abel became the first symbols of two paths of human development. Cain chose farming. He subdued the earth, forced it to yield to his will, built cities, created technologies, and mastered natural processes. Abel became a shepherd, moving with the rhythms of nature, trusting providence, living in harmony with what was given. The first sacrifice to God became the first clash of civilizations. Cain brought the fruits of his labor, grain, vegetables, the outcome of human effort. Abel offered the firstborn lamb, a symbol of trust, humility, and acknowledgement that the best belongs not to man. And God accepted Abel's sacrifice. Why? Because it carried no pride. It wasn't an attempt to prove his worth through achievements. Abel simply trusted. Cain, however, sought to earn God's love through his toil. But the most frightening part came next. Cain felt that his philosophy of life was rejected, that the way of control and domination could not lead to God, and from his heart burst the first jealousy in human history. Look at our world today. Who rules the planet? Those who created global corporations, financial systems, technologies of control, the modern Cains. They have subdued the earth so completely that they altered the climate, invented artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and digital currencies. And where are today's Abels? Those who live simple lives, follow natural rhythms, and preserve traditional values? They are being pushed out of cities, their farms consumed by corporations, their cultures erased by globalization. Once again, we face the same conflict. Two kinds of humanity, two philosophies, two faiths. Cain built the first city in human history. He named it after his son, Enoch. That city became the blueprint of every future metropolis, a place where man breaks away from the earth, from natural rhythms, from God. Abel built nothing permanent. He wandered, followed green pastures, trusted providence. His legacy was not stone and metal, but faith. Not technology, but trust. And then came the moment when these two philosophies could no longer coexist. Cain realized that Abel's presence cast doubt on his entire life. As long as another path existed, his own path could never be the only one. And so came the question that has echoed in every conflict since. Am I my brother's keeper? And the first blood was shed. But the most terrifying part was not the act of murder itself. It was what followed. The earth opened its mouth and received the blood of the innocent. That blood cried out to heaven, and it still cries out today. Every unjust death, every war among nations, every genocide, every destruction of the innocent, all of it is the echo of that first cry. And today, as we look upon a world torn apart by wars, millions of refugees, the annihilation of entire peoples, we hear the same cry. The blood of Abel still cries out to heaven. But who is willing to hear it today? The name Cain means acquisition, possession. The name Abel means breath, vanity, something that passes. Even in their names lies the code of their future conflict. One seeks to acquire, to accumulate, to possess. The other lives like a breath of wind light, unattached, trusting the moment. Is this not what we see in our own age? Some build fortunes, empires, and control resources. Others live day by day, trusting providence, holding on to their humanity. Cain's farming was humanity's first attempt to bend nature to its will, to force the earth to produce not what it offered, but what man demanded. It was a revolution against the natural order. Abel's shepherding was cooperation with nature. Animals know where to find food on their own. The shepherd simply protects and guides them. It was a philosophy of trust in a higher will. Today, this conflict has reached its peak. Modern humanity is divided into two castes, those who create technology and those who depend on it, makers of artificial intelligence and consumers of content, owners of platforms and users. Cain's sacrifice was the fruit of his labor. It carried the pride of human achievement. It was a bargaining sacrifice. I give you the results of my work, you give me blessing. Abel's sacrifice was the firstborn lamb, the best he had. Not the result of his effort, but a gift from God returned to God. It was a sacrifice of trust. God accepted Abel's sacrifice because it held no pride, no attempt to buy divine love with achievement. It was pure faith. When Cain saw his sacrifice rejected, the first inferiority complex in human history was born, not because he was worse than Abel, but because his life philosophy proved false. Cain's jealousy was more than an emotion. It was the existential terror of a man who realized his whole life was built on a lie, that there was another way, a better way. And then came the temptation to destroy the witness of that alternative. If Abel no longer existed, Cain's path would be the only one left. Come with me to the field. These words became the first deception in human history. Cain lured his brother to a place with no witnesses, where the earth could drink the blood and the sky hear no cry. The field became the stage of the first crime, and it was no accident. The field was Cain's domain, his territory, his kingdom. He brought Abel there to prove, here my rules reign. But when the earth received Abel's blood, something extraordinary happened. That blood did not simply sink into the ground. It remained alive. It continued to cry out. That cry is heard only by those who have kept their spiritual hearing. It resounds in every unjust killing, and every battlefield, and every genocide. The blood of the innocent does not remain silent. It accumulates, and when it becomes too much, heaven responds. Look at today's conflicts through this lens. Who are today's Cains? Those who build global empires, control information streams, manipulate the minds of millions, the self-proclaimed creators of a new world. And who are today's Abels? Ordinary people who live with integrity, farmers who refuse GMOs, teachers who preserve traditional values, priests who preach truth regardless of political pressure. And once again, we see the same conflict. The modern Cains cannot bear the existence of the modern Abels. because their very lives expose the lies of Cain's system. Where is Abel, your brother? This was the first question God asked humanity after the fall. Cain's reply became the manifesto of individualism. I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? These words divided humanity. They birthed a philosophy in which each cares only for himself, a belief that the strong owe nothing to the weak. But God did not accept Cain's answer, because humanity is one family, and when one perishes, all suffer. After Abel's murder, God did not simply punish Cain. He altered the very nature of his existence. When you till the ground, it will no longer yield its strength to you. The earth Cain had forced to serve him now refused to give him its power. This was more than punishment. It revealed a deeper truth. Violence against nature breeds violence among people. One who no longer respects the Creator's order in nature will inevitably lose respect for it in human relationships. Cain became the first refugee in human history. A restless wanderer you will be upon the earth. He lost his home, his roots, his bond with the soil that bore him. But the worst loss was his inner peace. He would always run, not so much from human vengeance, but from his own conscience, from the memory of what he had done. God placed a mark on Cain so that no one would kill him. That mark became a symbol of divine mercy, even toward a murderer. And yet, at the same time, it was a sign of eternal alienation. Cain would live, but never find rest. He would build cities, but never feel at home. He would have descendants, but never pass on what he himself had lost innocence. Cain built the first city in human history. He named it after his son, Enoch. That city was an attempt to create an artificial paradise, a place where man could feel secure without God. But this city became the prototype of civilization's problems, a concentration of power, where the strong oppress the weak, where connection with nature and God is lost. Cain's descendants became the first technocrats. Tubal-Cain forged tools of bronze and iron. Jubal became the father of music and instruments. They advanced civilization with art and technology. But from them also came Lamech, the first polygamist, the first to kill not one, but 2 men. The line of Cain shows how technical progress without spiritual growth leads to moral collapse. How human creativity can serve evil when the heart has no fear of God. Today, the curse of Cain has reached planetary scale. The earth has ceased to yield her strength to humanity. The climate is changing. Soils are exhausted. Resources are vanishing. But the most frightening thing is humanity's response like Cain's. Instead of repentance, we search for new technologies. Instead of returning to harmony with nature, we strive for deeper domination. Geoengineering, artificial clouds, genetic modification of crops, all attempts to solve a spiritual problem with technical solutions. Modern megacities are descendants of Cain's first city, places where humanity tries to hide from God and from nature. Artificial environments built to forget spiritual laws. Yet the bigger the cities grow, the lonelier their people become. The more advanced the technologies, the more disconnected we are from reality. The inhabitants of today's metropolises are Cain's descendants. They wander between offices and apartments, fleeing emptiness through entertainment and consumption, seeking meaning in careers and achievements. The modern mark of Cain is not a sign on the forehead, but an inner emptiness, the inability to find peace. an endless hunger for novelty, stimulation, validation. Today's Cains build corporations instead of cities, virtual worlds instead of real relationships. They seek immortality and technology instead of reconciliation with God. Generations raised in cities have lost their bond with the earth. They don't know how bread grows. They don't hear the voices of birds. They cannot read the language of nature. This is more than a romantic loss. It is spiritual. For nature is a revelation of God's glory. Those who cannot read the book of nature cannot understand the Bible either. Abel read that book daily. He knew rain was coming by the clouds, water by the flight of birds. His life was a constant dialogue with the Creator through creation. Cain closed that book when he began to dominate the soil. His descendants carried on this legacy, creating a world where God was unnecessary. Today the planet itself cries out, as Abel's blood once cried. Glaciers melt. Species vanish. Oceans are polluted. It is the cry of a planet that can no longer endure violence. The cry of nature, enslaved for too long by human pride instead of human humility. And once again, God asks, "Where is your brother?" But today, the question reaches further. It speaks of all living beings entrusted to humanity, of the entire planet given not to be destroyed, but to be cared for. After Abel's death, humanity split into two lines. One, the descendants of Cain, who built civilization without God. The other, the descendants of Seth, Adam's third son, given in place of the slain Abel. These two lines represent two philosophies of existence. The Cainites advanced technology, arts, and warfare. The Sethites began to call upon the name of the Lord, preserving the spiritual tradition. Cain's descendants became the first urbanists. They built cities, developed crafts, created culture. Jubal became the father of music. Tubal-Cain, the master of bronze and iron. But alongside progress came moral decline. Lamech, the fifth from Cain, became the first polygamist. He boasted of murder. "I killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me." This shows how technological growth without spiritual depth leads to corruption. Lamech not only killed, he glorified it. He used civilization's gifts to multiply evil. Seth's descendants lived simpler lives, but preserved their bond with God. Among them was Enoch, who walked with God and was taken alive into heaven, and Noah, who saved humanity through the flood. They did not build great cities or create complex technologies, but they preserved the most important gift, the ability to walk with the Creator. Before the flood, disaster struck. The sons of God, the Sethites, took wives from the daughters of men, the Cainites. The spiritual line mixed with the material. The result was a generation combining Cainite power with Sethite knowledge, using both for evil. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every thought of his heart was only evil continually. Today we see the same division. Some build technologies, corporations, artificial intelligence, the modern Cainites. Others preserve traditions, live simply, trust God more than machines, the modern Sethites. And once again we approach a moment of mixing, when technological might may unite with spiritual knowledge, when AI can read sacred texts, when genetic engineering can rewrite creation itself. Cainites have always sought alternatives to God. First, cities, artificial paradises. Then, art's beauty without the creator, then weapon security without the protector. Today this reaches its height. Artificial intelligence claims omniscience. Genetic engineering claims the power to create life. Digital technology claims to be an all-pervading spirit, but each carries the imprint of its makers. They can imitate divine qualities, but not give what only God provides: love, peace, true joy. The Bible speaks of mighty men, born from the union of the sons of God and the daughters of men. They were renowned in olden times, but their fame was built on violence and oppression. Today we see new giants, people who blend technical expertise with deep psychological insight, who manipulate mass consciousness, who claim the right to create a new world order. They are not giants in stature, but in power over minds. The flood was not just a natural disaster, it was spiritual cleansing. When the blood of the innocent cried too loudly, heaven responded. Many prophets today speak of a new flood, not necessarily of water, perhaps of information that will wash away lies, perhaps of spiritual awakening that will open humanity's eyes. Noah was righteous in his generation. He preserved his bond with God when all others abandoned it, and God used him to save both humanity and creation. Today, God seeks modern Noahs, people who preserve purity in a corrupted world, who are ready to build an ark even when mocked. That ark may not be of wood, it may be a spiritual community, an alternative economy, an educational system preserving eternal values. Each of us now stands before the same choice between two lines. We may join Cain's descendants pursuing technology, careers, and wealth, or follow Seth's line preserving values, trusting God, living simply. But the choice carries consequences not only for us, but for humanity's future. Today, the conflict between Cain and Abel has unfolded on a planetary scale. Entire continents represent different philosophies of life. The West, with its technocracy and individualism, embodies the spirit of Cain. The East, preserving traditions and collective life, is closer to the spirit of Abel. What is most striking is that geographically, the conflict still rages where the biblical brothers once lived. Mesopotamia, the Middle East, these lands remain the epicenter of wars, as if the soil itself remembers the first spilled blood and continues to draw it in. In today's world, Abel is no longer represented by people, but by resources: oil, gas, rare metals, water, everything that sustains modern civilization. And today's Cains are willing to kill for these resources, just as the first Cain killed his brother. Every war for oil is a retelling of Cain and Abel's story. Every conflict over water repeats the same archetypal pattern. The strong destroy the weak to seize what sustains life. Transnational corporations are the clearest embodiment of Cain's spirit in the modern world. They have no homeland, no borders, no responsibility to any people. Their philosophy is simple: maximize profit at any cost. If local farming must be destroyed, they destroy it. If rivers must be poisoned, they poison them. If populations must be displaced, they displace them. They build office towers and financial capitals, glass skyscrapers that stand as modern towers of Babel, attempts to reach heaven without God. Today's Cains have learned they don't need to kill Abel physically. It is enough to kill him spiritually, destroy his values, twist his words, paint him as the criminal, The media have become tools of this spiritual murder. Traditional peoples are portrayed as backward, religious believers as fanatics, those who defend nature as obstacles to progress. This is a more refined form of fratricide. Abel remains alive in body, but dies in spirit. His children forget their ancestors' language, abandon their parents' faith, become ashamed of their heritage. Look at modern conflicts through the lens of Cain and Abel. Who is always the aggressor? Those representing the technocratic civilization. Who becomes the victim? Those preserving a traditional way of life. Yugoslavia was divided not only by ethnicity, but by a clash of civilizational models. Arab was destroyed not merely for dictatorship, but because it represented an alternative to Western economics. Afghanistan resists for decades, not because it loves war, but because it holds to the nomadic spirit of Abel, the spirit of a people who cannot be conquered, for their strength lies not in technology, but in faith. The deadliest war of our age is the demographic war. Peoples who preserve traditional values are not erased by bombs, but by propaganda of barrenness. They are told children are an obstacle to success, that family is a prison, that traditions are relics of the past, and nations willingly choose extinction, believing an ideology of death. This is the most sophisticated form of genocide. When a people destroy themselves from within, the earth that once received Abel's blood now refuses to serve his killers. The climate shifts. Natural disasters multiply. The biosphere collapses. These are not merely industrial consequences, they are spiritual. The planet frees itself from those who set themselves above its laws. Humanity now stands at a crossroads. Either change its philosophy toward nature or face a planetary flood, not of water, but of ecological collapse. But at the same time, another process is rising. People are weary of technocratic dictatorship. They return to traditional farming, spiritual practices, community life. Eco-villages are the modern arks. Spiritual communities are islands of the old world in the sea of the new. Traditional peoples are seed keepers for a future rebirth. Religion plays a key role in this conflict. True faith always stands with Abel on the side of the weak, the oppressed, the forgotten. It defends human dignity against the tyranny of technology. But religion can also serve Cain when it bows to power, justifies injustice, blesses wars for resources. In this turning point of history, the role of prophets is crucial. Those who can reveal the spiritual meaning behind politics, who show that behind economic crises lie spiritual crises. Such prophets exist in every tradition. They speak in many languages, but their message is one. Humanity stands at a crossroads. We may walk the path of Cain into technocratic slavery, or return to the path of Abel into spiritual freedom. The Bible teaches us to read the signs of the times. Today, those signs multiply. Pandemics that halt economies, climate change that reshapes lives, social upheaval that exposes the fragility of civilization. All these are voices of the earth crying to heaven. The voice of Abel's blood echoed in billions, destroyed by Cain's civilization. And that voice will only grow louder until humanity learns to hear, until it understands technological progress without spiritual growth leads only into the abyss. We have walked a long road from the first murder to today's global conflicts, from the story of two brothers to the fate of all humankind. And now we stand before the same question God asked Cain: where is your brother? Today that question sounds wider. Where are your brothers and sisters who die of hunger while you throw food away? Where is your brother who becomes a refugee while you build higher walls? Where is your sister sold into slavery while you buy cheap goods? Two futures open before humanity. The first is the total victory of Cain's civilization, a world of complete control, where artificial intelligence knows everything about everyone, where genetic engineering decides who may be born, where digital technologies replace living conversation. In such a world there is no place for the Abels, no simple people who live by conscience, no farmers who feed the world, no prophets who speak the truth. There is only a smart system and its obedient users. The second future is the awakening of Abel's spirit. People remember what real life is. They realize that technology must serve the human person, not the other way around. They return to nature, to God, to simple human values. A new generation is being born, those who cannot accept technocratic rule. They refuse careers to serve their neighbors. They leave the cities to live on the land. They choose honorable poverty over dishonorable wealth. Such people become living signs of protest against Cain's world. Their lives prove there is another way, that survival is not the only law, that providence can be trusted. Yet the conflict between Cain and Abel is not only social, it is mystical. It is a struggle between two spirits, the spirit of pride and the spirit of humility, the desire to rule and the willingness to serve. Each of us carries both Cain and Abel within. Every day we choose pride or humility, to bend the world to ourselves or to serve the world. The key to this conflict is the meaning of sacrifice. Cain offered sacrifice to get a blessing. Abel offered sacrifice to give the best. Modern humanity has forgotten true sacrifice. We want to receive without giving, consume without creating, rule without serving. But life is built on sacrifice. A seed dies to give life to a plant. Parents give themselves for their children. Prophets give their lives for the sake of truth. The blood of Abel still cries to heaven, with the voices of millions of innocents destroyed by civilization, with the voices of children never born because of parental selfishness, with the voices of peoples erased by globalization. But the loudest cry is the cry of the planet itself. The earth that received the first blood now chokes on the blood of billions of creatures destroyed by human pride. Heaven will answer this cry as it answered with the flood in the days of Noah, with the fall of the Tower of Babel, with judgment upon Sodom. That answer may come as a global catastrophe, or as a spiritual awakening, or as a new revelation that changes human consciousness. Yet the story of Cain and Abel hides a hope. Abel died, but his spirit lived on, to Seth, to Enoch, to Noah. Abel's spirit cannot be destroyed, only buried. Today that spirit awakens again, in those tired of technocratic dictatorship, in those who seek true meaning, in those whose conscience cannot accept injustice. This is not just an ancient tale, it is a mirror for us all. Each day we choose to become Cain or to become Abel, to choose pride or humility, to serve ourselves or to serve others. Our choice shapes more than our own fate. It shapes the fate of the world. When one chooses, humanity chooses with them. So today, when we hear the cry of blood to heaven, we may answer not like Cain, "Am I my brother's keeper?" but as true children of God. Yes, I am responsible for my brother, for my sister, for the whole planet entrusted to me. The time of Cain is passing. The time of a new Abel draws near. Those who can offer God a sacrifice, not of pride, but of love. Those who can hear the cry of blood and answer with mercy. The story of Cain and Abel is not the past, it is a prophecy. It sets two paths before us, and each of us, by the life we live, votes for one of them. The blood of Abel still cries to heaven, but now it has a chance to be heard. Because there are people who can see spiritual battles behind politics, crises of conscience behind economic storms. The future of humanity depends on whether we can hear this cry and answer it not with violence, but with love, not with revenge, but with forgiveness, not with pride, but with humility.